Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I'm going to be talking to Derk. So she is the CEO and editor-in-chief of Bridal Fantasy Group, and she's also the co-founder of Derk's fine group of companies here in Edmonton, Alberta. Welcome to the show, Gay.
Good morning. So happy to be here and definitely looking forward to our conversation, Lance.
Now, Gay, you and your family have been right in the heart of entrepreneurship here in Edmonton. You've been in business or in multiple businesses for a number of years now. Can you walk me through those early days, I guess, of your entrepreneurial journey? And what was it that got you interested in becoming a business owner?
Well, I married into the family. That would be it. That is actually not my background. I'm actually a pharmacist, and I had only helped out part-time. And obviously, when we were building up the business in the beginning and stuff, we would work at several part-time jobs while I finished school, different things like that. I always helped out part-time. I kind of got thrown into it, and it's something that I do talk about. When my first son, a week before he was born, my husband was in a really bad accident. We had a burglar break into the house, and he ended up having a physiological amputation of his arm, internal injuries, head injuries. He basically was in the hospital for about 6 months, and then he took physio for about 5 years every day. So I basically had the baby, and we were small at that time, because when we started out in our South Side location that we had for over 40 years. It was originally about 800 square feet, and we subleased to other people. But as we grew, we basically took over the whole building for, a long time that we were in that location. Now we've kind of split up and done different things. So I kind of got in. I went in with my son in a dresser drawer, believe it or not. There were no car seats back then. I drove a Volkswagen van and got in. The first year I got in, I doubled the business. And once you're in, you just don't get out. So
and so this business that you're referring to, this would have been the Derk's
formals, and we had a small offshoot of menswear. Come from a menswear background. My husband's dad was a master tailor. We were the first menswear store in any mall. Capilano Mall was the first mall in Edmonton, and Derk's Menswear started off in Capilano Mall. There years ago. Yeah.
So then I just want to go back to the story. So this is just absolutely incredible. So I didn't realize this part of it. So your husband was injured, you have a brand new baby, and you're managing this store then on the South Side and trying to keep things rolling forward in all this chaos that's happening in your personal life.
Yeah, well, in those days, you didn't have a lot of staff, and it's kind of wedding season in Edmonton. We were all crunched into, a small allotment of time, or whatever you want to say. And this accident happened in May, so we were going full on into wedding and grad season. And in our business, it takes time to train people as well. So you do what you do, and that's just the way it was, right? Yeah, you just have to try and make things work. So we did make it work. Yeah.
So, okay. So just out of sheer determination, you get through those early years, and then you, like you said, you started then a location in Edmonton's first mall. And then tell me a little bit of what happened then after that. How did you grow the business?
Well, really, when we started, we got married in 76, and we started the business in 78 with the rentals, because that was not something that was really known at that time. A lot of people didn't rent tuxedos and that. Then, of course, when the late 70s and the 80s, all that kind of stuff went pretty wild. People started dressing up, just the way that fashion was changing, and that it just kept growing and growing. And of course, Edmonton, it's a big wedding area. Lots of ethnic people love to have big family weddings. That's a huge part of it. And, we started to grow almost right away. We had our first wholesale agents for Woodward stores.
Huh.
So we would rent all the Woodward stores in Alberta and BC. They would sub-rent our tuxedos, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so a relatively new concept then for the area at that time. Where did this idea come from then? Is this something that you observed in other larger cities, looking abroad into Vancouver and Toronto and New York and so on? Or is this something
No,
that
really, when Daryl's dad started, he started doing some of this out of his basement. So they would actually have like retail suits, but certain people couldn't afford to buy the whole suit. So they started renting them. And out of the basement of their home, they had some rentals. And then we basically decided to source some of our own stuff as well. So we went to Croatia, to Varsden. They have big factories there just outside of Austria. And we started designing our own stuff and bringing it in. So, and we did a lot of that up until the war that went on
in Croatia?
In Croatia, yeah, or Yugoslavia at the time, what it was called.
Really interesting. Okay, so from those early days to today, then how has the business changed?
There's a lot more factions of it. As you went forward, of course, the menswear became more and more prominent, and it's also divided into two factions. So you have Mr. Derk, which is your higher end menswear, and that now has a new location just down from where we are. And that's, anything, a lot of European products, really look for quality, but also looking at a decent price point for people and stuff like that. They do sub rentals from the rental end of it. Then we have, of course, the rentals. We're doing that. And then we've always done uniforms, but it was more so hospitality, things like that. But over the last, say, 15 years, we've gone more into uniforms. And that started from some friends that had a business that closed down, which was Hallmark Garments here. They asked us to look after some police uniforms. And my husband was able to correct some of the things that were wrong with the uniforms that the officers were complaining, and it just expanded from there. We had a competitor that had done uniforms for the police department in Edmonton, but didn't really look at the fabric or the composition that was done. So the first time the guys went to have them dry cleaned, they turned from blue to purple. So we kind of got into it, and we are now across Canada. So we're doing, anywhere from different things in Vancouver, Saanich, all the way to Toronto housing. We just did a show in, I think it was PEI last week. So for all the East Coast there. So all that kind of stuff is back on the go. Of course, COVID was a big really affected a lot of businesses, and you had to really pivot and try to do something. So we ended up doing masks. So we were doing masks for a lot of, first responders, for nurses, for CNRL, Syncrude, Suncor, like CP Rail, like all kinds of hundreds of thousands of masks that we did, of help to pull you through.
Yeah. And so when did Bridal Fantasy start then? How many years have you been doing that?
That's 40 years, just over 40 years now. So it's a long time. It started off, you did the first ones just at a hotel, and it started off small, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then about 25 years ago, we started a magazine as well. And a lot of the stuff that we do, there's some stuff has really gone international, some of the stuff with relationships and the people that we reach out to. It's a really high on our priority. Like, it's great that people get married, but you really have to talk and open up and work at your relationship. That's so important. We could save millions of dollars in, like everything from healthcare to mental care to everything else, if we just had ways to make relationships work a lot better. And so we talk about everything from money to sex to communication to lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So now, out of all these years that you've been growing businesses and finding opportunities, expanding into different lines of business, and but all kind of underneath the Dirks group, and then Bridal Fantasy as well. There's got to be a lot of challenges that you've had over the years besides just COVID recently. And so I'd love to hear how you're able to continually adapt over 40 plus years of being in business. So what is the secret that you bring to the table that allows for that longevity?
There's a couple things. Number one, you've got to keep learning all the time. You should be taking courses. I don't care if you're 90 years old, there's things that you can learn. And being around young people is great because you keep learning. That's one thing. Networking is important. A lot of people don't realize the importance of networking. The world is about the relationships you build and who you know that way, and what you do for them, what you put out into the world. What you put out into the world comes back to you one way or the other. So it's always been a focus of us. We've done a lot of work with charities over the years. Constantly, people ask you for, whether it's a tuxedo rental or a suit for something that you give away, and you just do everything that you can possibly do. We've done a lot with grad programs, with Compassion with Fashion, the Stollery, breast cancer. Bridal Fantasy always will select one different charity every year so that we can bring focus to other charities that are happening in Edmonton or throughout the world. Like, it's important for people to recognize there's different things at different times that you can look at and do that. The biggest thing, though, is to keep learning and keep your mind open. And you've got to realize you've got to change and you've got to adapt as things go along, because that's the way of the world right now.
Yeah.
And, social media, things like that, you have to be on top of it and, keep the lines of communication open between everybody. And you can learn a lot from a 2-year-old too.
I love the focus on learning. And so for you, because it's been so many years in the industry, in the business, where do you turn to for those learnings? You just mentioned a 2-year-old, but there's got to be some other things that you really are focused on. So there's
organizations. And there's, groups in Edmonton. I chaired Women in Retailing at the University of Alberta for 2 years. So there's organizations like that you can become part of. There's tons of women's organizations. There's being part of the chamber, other networking groups. And it's kind of like moving around. We also have been part of a lot of international organization, Bridal Show Producers International. Daryl was president of International Formal Wear for a couple of years. And Daryl also was, just because of what he did with the menswear, like he was flowing into a lot of people like Lord West or Samuelson to critique their lines and stuff like that. That's not like a normal situation that you would see. So that opens up the world to a lot of different levels that you wouldn't necessarily see, when you're in Edmonton.
Okay, so now if I had the power to grant you a trip back in time, is there anything that you would have done differently as you're, at any point of the growth of your group of companies here?
I think I would have started a bit like, we're just going into more online sales. We always did that with the uniforms, with the menswear. Rentals, it's pretty hard to do it. I know there's some companies in the States that have tried it, but it's not that successful. And the thing is, that's an important day. And you don't necessarily look great. Maybe some of the new apps that they've got, like Sizar, different things like that, it's going to be different. But with Bridal Fantasy, I wish we'd gone into more stuff online with that. But you only have so many hours in the day, and you have to prioritize what you're doing. You know, and there's a lot of different levels to training your staff, putting things into order, policies, procedures. We've really worked with a lot of people. We're constantly bringing in interns. We've had interns from the U of A, from Concordia College, Grant McEwen. It's really important to give back that way, and to help train different people like that. And they bring a lot to your company. There's different things that they can bring that you might not necessarily think of. You know, at the university, there's a lot that they do with fabrics and with technology and stuff like that, that a lot of people don't even know that there's internships like that. So they add a lot to your business.
Yeah. So now, what if you had the ability to pen yourself a letter? Okay. So thinking of that 1978 young entrepreneur who is trying to juggle everything you were juggling at that time, what would you give in terms of advice to that younger self?
You know what? The biggest thing I keep saying to everybody is just, the day you do something, like you have to remember who you are. And the day you think you can't do something because now you're successful, or you're not going to help somebody, you change. That's not right. So that's the one key that I've tried to remember. We're all equal. It doesn't matter who we are. And the day you can't help somebody, whether they're trying to learn something, whether they're trying to achieve something with a charity, whether they're trying to just put themselves through school. There's a lot of kids that have been with me 4, 5, 6 years as they put themselves through university and gone on and, you know, did a lot of other jobs. That's important, because what is life all about? You're not going to leave this world with any money or anything else. None of that. The only thing you leave with is love and what you put out, that kind of vibrational energy.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. It truly is. And so doing good, right? And being so involved in the community, not only fueled the success of the business because you're broadening that reach and people know who you are and everything, but at the same time you're doing so much good, which really is quite
and
self-fulfilling.
Sometimes we don't even realize. One of the things I like to share with people is a story of a mom that was in Win House and had 5 kids, and she had a boy in grade 9 that needed some they did a grad class and he didn't have clothes. She couldn't help him, and she phoned us, and we put some clothes together, etc., for his grad, but we also gifted him some clothes. In grade 12, she phoned us again. I'm still not doing that well. I'm doing better. I've got my life a bit more in order. Can you help me out with my boy? So yeah, we did this again. So you don't think anything about this. About 10 years later after this man comes in and he's getting married, and he said, I would like you to do something really special for me. I want you to get Mrs. Derk in, and I know she's got 2 sons. I want you to bring the sons in. I want to talk to them. So this was the boy. And he said it was a huge turnaround for him, because he thought everything was bad. Nobody would help you. He was now a vice principal of a school, marrying a Toronto Dominion Bank manager. So, there's things like that you do in your life and you don't realize. Your hand reaches out and it can be passed on big time. I know Sterling, especially my one son, they're doing a lot right now with Gregor's grads and kids that they give them a suit, a shirt, a tie, and shoes. And those kind of things are important. It's important to the kids, and it's really good for the community, because overall it just it gives back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not only that, I mean, it's just such a powerful thing to put on, I think anyway, a suit. I remember my first suit. I remember how that made me feel, right? And so for helping those individuals that don't have that opportunity to be able to put that on, and it's almost, I don't know, it transforms a part of you a little bit, right? You think of yourself a little bit differently, you carry yourself a little bit differently. It gives you hope, but confidence, and everything else. So that's really neat. And I applaud you guys on all of those great
And a
great
lot of
efforts.
this is, it's to do with families. I know, like right before COVID, a gentleman came in and he was in his 80s and his grandson is getting married. And he wanted to talk to me. And he says, well, he thought it was my dad. He says, I knew your dad, Stephen. So my father-in-law would go to all the mining camps and the lumber camps, and he would measure people. It would come in COD, and he was saying how there was something like 30 of them that got suits and nobody needed an alteration. So yeah, he definitely was a master tailor, and you have that kind of thing where people recognize or consider you part of a celebration of their life, and
Yeah.
that's really important.
Yeah. So now there's been the last couple of years, especially for the bridal fantasy side of the business, but also for the tux rentals and that over at Derk's, the COVID, stopped so many celebrations, so many, weddings and in-person events and everything else. And so I know in terms of industries, your industry was probably one of the most
hardest hit.
Yeah, hit for sure. And so, and you've weathered through it. You're on this side of it, which is just unbelievable. So when you're seeing that kind of an impact on your business, what keeps you, Gay, able to be focused on, 2 years out and just keeping things in motion, keeping the optimism? How do you mentally handle that?
You know what? Part of it is raising your vibrational energy in this world. I mean, lots of things come at you and they obviously affect all of us. And it's taking, a few minutes every day to be grateful for what you've got. And there always is something. And you need to spend 5 minutes meditating on what are those things that are coming up, because yourself. There's a voice within you that talks to you, and you kind of know what direction you need to take. And I mean, we all know that if we quiet ourselves and listen, which way to choose. There is a voice there, and that's important. And if you combine that with, like I said, constantly learning things. I mean, we're so lucky now. There's like Zoom and there's online courses and all the things that you can, those weren't even options in my day. But it's, it's other things. Like when you see somebody that's having trouble with something, a lot of times, say even it's something as little as like QuickBooks, and learning something yourself so you're able to show somebody what they need to do. That's so important in any job, is to break it down into the little pieces, because not everybody learns the same way. And that's one of the things that you learn. And, I always say that we're in the emergency business because we don't have a chance to do it right again. So you have to go out of your way to try and do the best that you can for a wedding, because they're not going to get another photographer and redo this day, because it's just not going to happen,
Yeah, you got one shot. You got to make it count.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Gay. You and the rest of the family over there in the Derk group is, you're just pillars of the community. You've been here for so many years, serving it in so many different ways. And so it's just a real privilege to have you on the show today, just to share some of the insights, some of the experiences. I would love it if you could just end on sharing one of the stories of another character that has come through the doors. I remember having an early conversation with you, a few months ago, in which you were talking about just some of the celebrities and that came through, and some of the funny stories that you had. I'd love it if you could just wrap up the show with a great story.
Well, a lot of people don't know that SCTV started here, which was one thing. So we
Yeah.
would do some of the tuxedos for some of the shows they did. And that was funny, like John Candy and different things when he did the Schmangy Brothers and fitting the tuxes, those things, the Oilers when they won, or they had their family weddings and stuff like that. Over the years, we did coaches corners. So you'd have a lot of the coaches from all the hockey teams come in, and we would gift them with shirts and ties and stuff after they'd been on television, or just, I don't know, like different rock bands. There's been different things where they lost their clothes and they just need something, or opera singers. There are so many opportunities that come up, but all the important people, they're just as wonderful as the everyday people, because that's really what makes the world go round.
Yeah, well said. Well, thank you, Gay. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are listening today, if you want to check out some archives, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find all of our past episodes and our future episodes. And if you happen to have a story, an entrepreneurial journey that you want to share, then there's an application form on that site as well, so that you can potentially be a future guest of Amplify Your Business. Thank you once again, Gay.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. And to everybody who's listening, I hope you have a prosperous day.